Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome to our Deconstructing Dinner presentation. I am Caitlin, the site lead here at 701 Fitness.
And I am TJ, and I am the health fitness specialist here at 701.
Yeah, so thank you for taking the time to attend this lunch and learn today. We're going to talk about behavior change and creating a food prep routine that will work in your busy life. We want this to be an interactive experience, so please use the hand raise feature anytime throughout the presentation to ask questions or give input. You're also welcome to drop questions that you have into the chat. So let's get rolling.
All right, so I will be kicking off slide number 2. So this first question goes to you, Caitlin. In your opinion, what is a great meal?
I think a great meal is one where I can enjoy it with other people. I really try to eat as healthy as I can, but I also like food to taste really good. So it needs to have flavor, spending time with quality people, and uh, enjoying what I'm eating.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, so with the other questions that I'll be presenting, things to think about are, is it a big meal or a small meal? Is it at home or are you eating at a restaurant or at a friend's house? Are you eating dinner or are you eating late? And then are you eating alone or do you have family that you eat with or friends that you eat with? And is it healthy or not healthy? So the reason why we're focusing on dinner is because there is a study out by Massive Health that found out that the average dinner is 16% less than breakfast. So it's less healthy than breakfast. And so in this lunch and learn, we will focus on strategies to help plan and prep healthier meals.
Great. We'll move on to the next section here. So, on average, those who cook most of their meals at home consume around 200 fewer calories and 16 grams less sugar daily than those who eat out often. So, cooking dinner frequently at home is associated with a healthier diet, which is a good goal no matter what your composition goals are. We'll focus on a few strategies that encourage you to cook more often and help you navigate the foods you purchase. So, TJ, do you find it challenging to eat dinner at home most days? And if so, what barriers do you face?
I know for me, when I'm eating dinner at home, most times dinner is at home. But for me, when I get home from work, I'm usually hungry or starving by that point in time. So I always try to find something that's really fast. I try my best to like keep it healthy. So in my eyes, like grabbing a chicken sausage and throwing some veggies on a plate and throwing it in the microwave is just a lot better choice than sometimes I might kind of cave in and eat chips and salsa, which is not really a good snack, nor is it a good meal.
Yeah, and I feel like my most challenging thing that I face when I'm trying to eat a healthy meal is just having enough food in the house. So for me, it's the whole week prior or even the day prior going grocery shopping. So when I don't have healthy food available is when we usually uh, eat a little bit less healthy, like throwing in a pizza or grabbing food out at a restaurant just because we don't have anything available that's
Yeah,
to go.
I've come across moments like that too.
Yeah, good. So we're going to talk about some strategies moving forward in the presentation here.
So for this next slide, I am going to throw a question your way. Are you one for eating breakfast or skipping breakfast?
I always eat breakfast. I usually eat two breakfasts since
Yeah,
I wake up so early in the morning.
yeah,
I always have a really big goal of eating before any sort of workout I do, even if it's a really small meal.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I do not skip breakfast either. So in this particular slide, so the foods that you eat for dinner are the product of choices that you made leading up to that meal. In the Daily Research Institute reports that people who skip breakfast actually consume 45% less vegetables than those who do not. So, have you ever been in a rush in the morning and skipped breakfast, and then you are so busy at work that when lunch rolls around, you grab a slice of pizza, and then when you get off work, you're hungry, you decide to stop and grab like fast food, just because you don't have anything available or prepped or ready, like when you get home. So then by that time, you're like, oh, well, I already messed up. So what's the worst that could happen? So how you finish a race greatly depends on how you start. So we're not exactly demonizing like that you can't have, fast food or, specific foods, but what we do want is to be able to build a good foundation, for like healthy habits. So that way you can fuel your body for success. So just remember that our food choices are a byproduct of our habits, and the foods that you eat for dinner are the product of the choices that you make before, that meal.
Yeah, I feel like during COVID, I had kind of went through this exact scenario. I would sleep in later, so then wouldn't be hungry in the morning. I would probably leave to class at the noon hour and then jump right back into meetings and then realize, oh, it's 2 o'clock. I haven't eaten anything yet, and pushed all of my meals late way back in the day.
Yep.
And then probably didn't eat as healthy because we're again hungry for dinner and it's late. So I think thinking about eating breakfast and kind of planning things out throughout the day and trying to push some calories earlier in the day is a really good focus.
Yeah, because I've noticed within like if I eat breakfast, like granted that for me it's usually like yogurt and berries and like granola or some sort of like keto cereal. But I feel like if it doesn't really constitute like an actual meal, that I find if I end up starving like sooner than I'm ready for like the next meal, if I don't eat enough, that I feel like it just kind of plays into like the rest of my day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, we'll move along to the next one. So here we have a model for behavior change, and this was created by BJ Fogg, which he was an accredited behavioral scientist. On one axis, we have the level of motivation, and the other axis shows your ability. So anything that happens below the line, that curved line that you see, does not result in change. So for example, if I have high motivation to lose weight, but I don't know where to start and my ability is low, then I can't make a significant change in my behavior and I'm not able to lose weight. Or another example, if I have really high ability to run a marathon, like I really could do it if I wanted to, but my motivation is really low, I will likely not make the change in behavior and won't run a marathon. So, and then looking at this curve, everything where it says green, everything above that curve is where triggers can turn into a behavior change. So for an example, if I have a smartwatch and I have that little buzz throughout the day, get up and move reminder. I have a high ability, but maybe I have minimal motivation, but I'm still slightly above that curve. So I will do it most of the time because it's so easy. I'll just get up and get my steps in to hit that goal. Another example would be eating lunch. So I'm really hungry, so I have the motivation to eat, and I also have the ability to walk to lunch and pay for it. So it becomes a regular habit, part of my routine. So certain things require a lot of motivation, even though they may not require high ability. You can take advantage of the times throughout the day you feel highly motivated and couple those with tasks that require minimal ability.
Awesome. So for this next slide, so let's start off with a little bit of a statistic. So the brain occupies 2% of our body's mass, but uses 20% of our energy, which is kind of amazing when you think of something that weighs, well, not very much, but takes a lot of energy to, get us through, the day. So we're going to talk about self-control. So self-control is the ability to control or gain and override one's thoughts, emotions, urges, and behaviors. So we need to eat throughout the day to ensure that the brain has enough fuel, obviously, to work effectively, just like our bodies. So if we're hungry, that hunger impairs the ability to exert self-control, but also, just to make smart choices. So for example, if you are really hungry and you go to the grocery store, you are more likely to overbuy on snacks, and processed foods, or maybe you just end up with more in your cart than you intentionally thought. I've had that, I've had that happen to me. So then when you're hungry, that thought process slows down, and you're more likely to make bad decisions. So therefore, when you're hungry and the blood sugar is low, that kind of delays or slows down that cognitive speed. So my question to you, Caitlin, is how have you found that being hungry affects your mood, your cognition, and your decision making?
Yeah, for me, it really affects it. I get hangry pretty easily. So I need to make sure I always have some food available, even if it's just like a protein bar or an apple with peanut butter or something that I can eat throughout the day. It really affects my mood. I can just like feel myself overreacting to things that are really small if I'm hungry. And I've had that same exact example with the grocery store. I've spend an extra $100 just on things that I really didn't need, uh, especially on the more unhealthy foods when I go if I'm too hungry. So always making sure I eat before the grocery store is a uh, really good goal. How about you, TJ?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. There have been times where if I do go grocery shopping, um, especially in my case, if I go to Costco, I swear I probably walk out with more than I should. Um, so yeah, I need to like really kind of reel it in. I do a good job of getting out, getting what I need. But there have been days like that where I've, you know, made slightly poor decisions, just because I was probably hungry.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So let's look deeper into our motivation cycles for specific behaviors. The motivation to do certain things is variable throughout the day and throughout our week. Everyone has their own unique variable curve of motivation for every habit and action. When your motivation is high, this is a great time to make your hard choices or do tasks that take high levels of motivation. For us today in this presentation, talking about food prepping is a really good thing to do when you have high motivation. When your motivation is low, try to keep tasks simple, such as eating a snack that you already prepared, or maybe it's just like taking all the food that you already prepped and putting it into a container to bring to lunch the next day. So start thinking about your own motivational cycles. TJ, when do you feel the most motivated to eat well, to food prep, and to think about your health?
First of all, I do really like this slide because, when we were putting this together, I found myself kind of going through the when is my motivation high? When is my motivation low? Um, so I'm more motivated during the weekend to meal prep but there are times where if that motivation isn't high, that I do just try to find like a mindless task like cutting up vegetables, um, for the meal that I'll be making, especially to at least last like, three or four like servings. Um, so yeah, I would say the weekend. And then when it comes to the week, I find it's a little easier when I already have like a pan of like or a pot of like quinoa already cooked, that it's just easy to throw it into stuff, and just the meal goes by, like that preparation goes by so much quicker and I feel better about it. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of feel similar. Usually on Sunday nights, I'll cook an extra protein that I'll use for the next few days and build into my lunches or even to dinners. And then usually Wednesday, Thursday, I have a little bit more time in the evening. So I again do a similar like food prepping for the next couple days to get through. Sometimes earlier in the week is just really busy. And even looking this on like a day-to-day scale, I have way more motivation in the morning and then midday than in the evening. I pretty much drops down to zero. So I try to not leave too much of my uh, like having to think about what food I'm prepping for the evening. I try to plan that all out in the morning and during the weekends.
Awesome. So we're going to move on to another strategy. So pretty much this is in relation to when we're doing our grocery shopping. So when it comes to grocery shopping, we have some handouts that we're going to email out to you all, this being one of them. And so when we consider going to the grocery store, that pretty much before you start, you just want to make sure that you're planning ahead, that you have a list of what it is that you are going to be making. Um, and so if it's one meal that you're prepping, then you just need the ingredients for that one meal. But maybe it's two different meals, you just want to make sure that you're ready. Shop while you're fueled, making sure you're not going to the grocery store while you're hungry, and then searching for new foods to try. Now, just keep in mind, that you know how to prepare those, just so that you don't buy it and maybe it goes to waste or it just sits in your pantry. So in this case, that motivation need, is going to be high because you have to plan. But then when we get to the grocery store, that motivation need, might be a little lower. But still, again, make sure that you're just fueled for your grocery store trip. So when you're at the grocery store, just cover the perimeter of the grocery store itself. So shooting for colorful produce, fats that give back, which would be like the walnuts, almonds, seeds, those sorts of things that might be in the bulk section. That would kind of be that outer perimeter. But otherwise, lean proteins, your fish, poultry. The one of the exceptions would be like finding like your beans and your nuts and legumes, maybe more in the center of the grocery store. And then lastly, on that outer perimeter would be, nutrient dense dairy, or, eggs, not really dairy, but eggs are on the outside, but Greek yogurt, milk, or a dairy alternative. Really, again, the only other exception would be like canned beans, frozen veggies. But just, keep in mind when you're shopping in the center of your grocery store that this is where you're going to find, boxed food items. Maybe they're very highly processed, not high in nutrients, more shiny packaging, like the cookies and stuff that, or the chips, those kind of come in that weird kind of shiny, crinkly packaging. So my question to you, Caitlin, is do you go to the grocery store with a plan, or what is your grocery shopping strategy?
Yeah, I definitely go with a plan. I a lot of times buy the same type of foods, and most of it's on the outer edge, I would say. buy a really good amount of veggies and fruits. I try to buy some healthier bread and then Greek yogurt, almond milk, eggs, and kind of do a big loop around the grocery store and then go in the middle for my like sparkling waters and those sort of things. But really don't spend too much time, I would say, in the middle. It's always another step to add in that is takes even more time, but it is really nice as well, is to sometimes pick what recipes you're going to make ahead of time before even going to the grocery store and listing all of those out, checking your pantry to see what you need and what you have. So I don't always do that step. A lot of times I find myself making similar meals, but sometimes I'm able to add in that extra step to even try some new recipes. How about you, TJ?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion because I can't tell you how many times, you know, like I like to try different things, but then I find myself like I have some of the ingredients, but I don't have all the ingredients. So then when I think I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make that, but then I don't have everything. So I'm like, okay, clearly, clearly I need to do a better job of planning and making sure that I have everything I need. Um, but yeah, I do try to keep a list, but sometimes I'm not the best at keeping that list up to date. Hence the story of trying new recipes. So yeah, I really wouldn't say that. I guess my strategy has like really helped. You know, again, if I just need a couple of things, I'll just get in and get out, and I know exactly what I'm shopping for. But as long as I'm fueled, I think that really helps. You know, just kind of make that happen really quick.
Yeah, I do a lot of like grocery pickup as well, so I can add things throughout the week.
Yeah, my sister has had a lot of success with that. She finds herself not buying the unnecessary items.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to our next strategy. So when you have a high level of motivation, it's a good time when you get home from the grocery store, or I find that I'm tired when I get home from the grocery store. So I don't do this right then. But if you do have high level of motivation when you get home, cutting and chopping vegetables and fruit to kind of prep for meals, preparing proteins like TJ and I were both talking about earlier. We kind of prepare our proteins for later in the week, and then you can add them into different meals. And then pre-cook high fiber carbohydrate sources for times when you need the most. So you can prep large amounts of food at one time and then utilize them into different meals, or even just cut veggies and fruit so that they're ready to go when you are really hungry. So to get started, start small. Don't try to plan out the entire week's meals in advance, just 1 to 2 days. One strategy that I personally use is I just make extra food for dinner and then bring it to lunch the next day. That works really well for me so that I don't have to buy lunch every day and I can kind of plan out what I'm eating. But that's just one strategy. So work in your comfort zone. Don't uh, or use familiar skills and don't try to test your culinary ability when learning to change this habit. So prepare easy recipes and don't try to get too fancy. So the 4 strategies that we want to work on is to prep the protein, like we've discussed, soften starches, chop produce, and set aside sauces. If you try a bunch of these, you can kind of create a lot of different meals using similar foods, but get a lot of different flavor profiles if you use different sauces. I do this a lot with like stir fries and try different sauces there. And then I can always turn it into more of a Mexican dish by adding different spices as well. So different flavors, even if it's similar foods, can definitely make it seem more interesting. So what strategies do you use, TJ, to food prep? We've talked about some of them, but do you have any other ones that you add in?
Yeah, so like going back to my quinoa, sort of thing. Like, so what I'll usually do is I'll just make the pot of quinoa, but I just keep it plain. The only seasonings that I'll use would be like salt and pepper and, some garlic powder, but I keep it basic, for the reason that if I'm going to mix it into like other things that I'm making, then I feel like then that's where I could season it differently just so it takes on a different flavor profile and not really feel like I'm eating the same thing all the time. Some people are fine with that, and some people just want to mix things up. Again, just as long as you have, your sauces or your, spice blends, or whatever kind of prepped and ready for you. So that way it just makes it easier just to add to it. I usually am good about chopping the produce up ahead of time. Just makes it a lot easier in that sense. Um, and I do tend to do that prepping of the protein where I'll make, a bunch of chicken again in the oven, and I'll just keep the seasoning simple, just salt and pepper, and then just whatever I do with it, then at least I can, season it how I want to. I do try to get slightly fancy, so that's just me. I think I watch a lot of cooking shows, so things are interesting to me, but I try not to get too wild.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we'll move on.
All right, so for this next strategy, we're going to talk about taking those meals that you prepped and, portioning them out. And so you just want to make sure that with a clear head and, that an adequately fueled stomach, or that, you've eaten a meal and that you're ready to kind of divide these availably, prepared like foods that you've made into portions that will satisfy you, not slow you down, and making you feel like you're still hungry. So if you plan out your meals, you'll be less likely to double portions, just to kind of add a little humor, add a Snickers bar, and then just gravitating towards making better food choices. So before we start, things to consider are just stocking up on storage. So just making sure that we have containers to put these foods in, because nothing's as bad as making this like, meal prepped meal and not being able to have the dishes to store them in. Which kind of leads to that next bullet point is, let's say you do have the dishes to store them in, but they're not clean. You just want to make sure that you kind of knock out um, that particular chore, just so you're not thinking about it while you're meal prepping. And then just having a daily game plan. How many foods, what types of stuff do you want to have throughout the day? Are you aiming for 2 meals and a snack? Are you just wanting more snacks prepared just so that they're just easy to grab? Those are things to think about. So we'll kind of go off to our little number chart. So we're going to use our hands to portion out certain things, whether it's like we're kind of like using like the scoop, for like our handful of grains, or if we're going to use like our palm size for our proteins, or, your thumb for your fats, or, both hands for your vegetables, because that's kind of an unlimited serving that you can have. And then just store as you serve. So pairing like temperatures, textures, states of which the food is in, if it's liquids versus solids, and then using the right equipment. You want to make sure that the container you're using is microwave safe, durable, portable. That the lid is going to stay on and it's not going to leak everywhere. My personal, preference when it comes to meal prep containers is I usually just prefer glass over plastic, because I don't have to worry about that concern of like the chemicals leaching into my food while I'm heating up that container in the microwave. So I just go glass. And then last, just have it when you need it. Don't forget to take your meals and your snacks with you. Don't forget that they're in the refrigerator just so that you're able to stay fueled. So in this case, that motivation need is kind of in between a low and moderate phase. Um, would you agree with that, Caitlin?
I would say um, it's not that much work to take the foods that you've already prepped and put into storage containers, but you need a little bit of motivation there. Okay, we're gonna move on here. We're running up to the end. So we're gonna check back in with our motivational curve. Think about the course of your week. When do you feel like you consistently have a high motivation to eat well or prepare for times when you have less motivation? One more thing I was going to say that I personally do for food prepping is every once in a while, probably once a quarter, I get together with my sister-in-laws, but you can get together with friends or you can do this all on your own if you'd like as well. But we prepare a ton of different meals. We all buy it together and then we divvy it out after, and they're all freezer meals, ones that we can thaw out and then cook on the stove top after. So a bunch of different pastas and stuff like that. I've made some really good like uh, shrimp and Mexican meals. So a lot of for days that I have zero motivation and I really just like really hungry, but I want to still grab for one of those healthier options. I can grab one of these pre-packaged meals that I've already created and they last for a few months in the freezer. So that's one more option that you can do. But those are on days that you're like super highly motivated, preparing ahead of time for days that you're not as motivated. So identify during the week when you feel like you have the most motivation, get those big ticket items done, the grocery shopping, the food prepping, and then when you're tired, just getting that food in containers for the next day and preparing there. Okay, TJ, anything else to add here?
Nothing to add. I just really think this was a lot of great information, just to be able to share, our suggestions and, um, our tips of what we found successful, and hopefully it helps other people.
Yeah, and if you have any other questions about anything, feel free to email us or to stop in and chat with us. We love talking about food and nutrition. We can't answer like very specific questions related to nutrition, but if it's about food prepping or strategies we've used or recommend, we can definitely chat about that. So thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and join us next month for another great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.